I still remember the heat of his hands on my waist, the moment I realized I had crossed a line I could never erase. Thank you to everyone watching, new faces and loyal subscribers, for joining me in this raw, unfiltered space. Your support fuels these stories. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, please do. Every click reminds me I am not alone in this messy human journey. Now let's begin. My name is Sylvia Wickham. At 55, I was the woman who had it all. A Georgian mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, a Lexus with custom plates, and Richard, my husband of 28 years. Richard was efficient. A corporate lawyer who loved spreadsheets more than my laugh. Our marriage? A museum of quiet dinners and separate bedrooms. Then came Enrique. He was hired to maintain the gardens, fix leaky faucets, and pretend not to notice the cracks in our marriage. 30 years old, with calloused hands and a smile that could melt frost. Guatemalan, undocumented, and painfully polite. At first, he was just a shadow in my periphery, mowing lawns, trimming hedges, his Spanish murmurs blending with the breeze. But loneliness sharpens the senses. I started noticing things. How his t-shirt clung to his back when he sweat, the way he would pause to wipe his brow, flicking droplets like liquid courage. We would chat about mundane things, the weather, the roses, his daughter back home. Harmless. Until it wasn't. One afternoon, Richard left for a client dinner, a lie I would later throw in his face. The house felt suffocating. I wandered to the patio, where Enrique was pruning hydrangeas. He stood when he saw me, dusting soil off his jeans. Need something, Mrs. Wickham?
Yes. To feel alive.
I asked him to check the broken thermostat upstairs. In the guest room, his arm brushed mine as he just the dial. The air thickened. He turned, and for a heartbeat, we were statues, his dark eyes locked on mine, my breath hitching. He stepped back first. It's fixed. But nothing was. That night, I drank Pinot Noir alone, replaying his scent, sweat, and cedar. I told myself it was a fluke, a midlife tremor. But the next day, I needed help rearranging furniture. His biceps strained as he moved the couch, veins mapping his forearms. My skin prickled. You're strong, I stammered.
He smirked.
You're observant. A joke. A spark. A wildfire waiting to happen. By week's end, I had invented 6 reasons to keep him indoors. Each interaction grew charged, a lingering handoff of iced tea, his thumb grazing mine. Once he caught me staring. Instead of looking away, he held my gaze defiant. Daring me.
Guilt gnawed at me.
I would kneel in church, begging forgiveness, then return home and slip into silk robes I knew he would see. The final straw? Richard's sudden trip to Chicago. 2 weeks, he said, pecking my cheek. Don't burn down the house. Oh, I will burn something. Enrique arrived the next morning. I greeted him in a sleeveless sundress, my neck damp from nerves. He froze, eyes raking over me. Pool's looking murky, I said. Mind checking the filter? He followed me outside, silent. I felt his stare like sunlight. Then disaster. I tripped on the wet tiles. He caught me, hands cinching my waist, my back pressed against his chest. Time stopped. His breath warmed my neck, shaky. Mrs. Wickham. Sylvia. He released me like I had scorched him, muttered an apology.
Fled.
I stood there, trembling. Not from the fall. From the fall to come. The days after the pool incident were a blur of humid afternoons and sleepless nights. Guilt clawed at me, but desire? Desire burned. I told myself I would avoid Enrique, cancel his services and the danger. Instead, I doubled his hours. The guest bathroom faucet is leaking, I told him, avoiding his eyes. I will fix it, he said, voice low. Neither of us moved. Richard called every evening, his voice as lively as a voicemail. The depositions dragging on. Be home Friday. For more days. 4 days to either reclaim my sanity or destroy it. By Wednesday, the skies turned vengeful. Dark clouds loomed, the air thick with the promise of chaos. Enrique arrived early, unkempt and unusually tense. He had been quiet all week, his smiles guarded. That morning, he fixed the attic fan, his boots thudding above me like a heartbeat. Storm's coming, he said later, wiping grease from his hands at the kitchen island. You got candles? In the pantry. I clutched my coffee cup, knuckles white. You should go home early. Before it hits. He hesitated. I will check the gutters first. Thunder growled. Rain slammed the windows in sheets. By noon, the power died, plunging us into shadows. Enrique found me in the living room, fumbling with matches. Let me, he said, taking the box. His fingers trembled. Candlelight danced between us, carving his face into something mythical. Sharp jaw, flickering eyes. We stood too close. I could count his lashes. You're scared of storms? I asked. No. He lit the last candle. Of what happens in the dark. The admission hung there, fragile. I poured 2 glasses of Merlot, a poor excuse to keep him near. We sat on the couch, a cushion between us, while the storm raged. He talked about Guatemala, his daughter's asthma, his brother's murder by gangs, the desert crossing that nearly killed him. His voice cracked. I am just tired, Sylvia. My name on his lips. A first. I inched closer. You don't have to be strong here. He turned, wine staining his mouth. The candlelight drowned in his pupils. And you? What do you need? Everything. Nothing. Him. I don't know who closed the gap. Our kiss was bruising, desperate, a collision of pent-up yearning. His hands tangled in my hair. Mine gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. The taste of him, wine, salt, danger, unraveled me. We sank into the couch, a tangle of limbs and muffled breaths, his calloused palms sliding under my sweater. Tires crunched on gravel. We froze. Headlights cut through the rain. Richard. Enrique scrambled back, chest heaving. I straightened my clothes, fingers shaking. The back door, I hissed. Go. He vanished into the storm as Richard barged in, soaked and scowling. Flight got canceled. Whole city's a mess. I nodded, lips still throbbing from the kiss. I will make tea. Upstairs, I scrubbed my mouth raw. But nothing could erase the truth. I had wanted more. Still did. The next morning, Enrique returned, avoiding my eyes as he repaired a shutter. I stood in the doorway, watching him work. Yesterday was a mistake, I lied. He paused, drill whirring. You regret it? Yes. No, it can't happen again. He stepped closer, heat rolling off him. What if I wanted to? My pulse roared. Richard was in his study, oblivious. Enrique's thumb brushed my wrist. Tonight. After he's asleep. I pulled away. No. But when midnight chimed, I crept downstairs. He waited in the garden, shadows clinging to him like a second skin. I knew you would come, he whispered. And God help me, he was right. Richard left again, this time for a fishing trip with his college buddies. I didn't bother pretending to believe him. The lie was brittle, but so was our marriage. The moment his car vanished down the driveway, I texted Enrique. The patio lights need adjusting. A flimsy excuse, but he understood. He arrived at dusk, wearing a faded gray hoodie and a look of quiet resolve. We didn't speak. Words would have ruined it. I led him upstairs, my legs trembling, the house silent except for the creak of steps beneath our weight. My bedroom smelled of lavender and regret. What followed wasn't love. It was hunger. His hands were rough but deliberate, mapping my skin like a man memorizing a route home. My silk robe pooled on the floor, a discarded second skin. I hadn't been touched in years, not like this, not with wanting. Richard's affections were transactional, a checklist. Enrique's were a wildfire. I let myself burn. Afterward, he traced the scar on my hip, a relic from a long-ago C-section. "Who hurt you?" he asked, voice gravelly. "Life," I whispered. He told me about the coyotes then, the ones who had smuggled him across the border. Cost me $8,000. Left my brother in the desert. His throat tightened. "I am not even supposed to be here, Sylvia." The confession hung between us, raw and ugly. I cupped his face, my thumb brushing his stubble. "I will protect you." The promise felt noble, reckless. A lie I almost believed. He left before dawn. I showered, scrubbing his scent away, but the guilt clung. By noon, I was numb, adrift. That's when I found it. Richard's iPad buzzed on the kitchen counter, forgotten. A notification flashed. "Miss you, babe. Tonight?" The text was from a number labeled client. "Do not answer." I clicked. Photos. Dozens of them. A blonde half my age, laughing on a yacht, her lips on his neck. Richard's hand gripping her thigh. Dates stamped over a year. The room tilted. I gripped the counter, bowel rising. He had called me cold. He had blamed me. Rage is a funny thing. It doesn't roar, it hisses. It festers. By nightfall, it had curdled into something reckless. I invited Enrique back. This time, I didn't bother with the patio lights. He found me in the study, Richard's whiskey in my hand. I drank deeply, the liquor burning my throat. "You're shaking," he said, taking the glass. "My husband's fucking a child." He stilled. "What now?" I kissed him, hard. Let the whiskey sting his lips. Let my nails dig into his shoulders. He hesitated, then yielded, his anger mirroring mine. We were two wounded animals, gnashing teeth and tangled limbs. The couch groaned beneath us. Later, he asked, "Was this revenge?"
Yes.
"And tomorrow?" I stared at the ceiling. "I don't know." He dressed silently. At the door, he turned. "Be careful, Sylvia. Secrets rot faster than lies." I laughed, a brittle, broken sound. Too late. The house felt colder after he left. I poured another drink, scrolling through Richard's messages again. Each photo, each "I love you" to her, carved deeper. I drafted a dozen texts to him. "You monster. How could you? I hate you," but deleted them all. Instead, I texted Enrique. "Come back tomorrow." No reply. But he would show up. Men always do when you feed their hunger. Paranoia is a poison. It seeps into your bones, sharpens your senses, and paints every shadow as a threat. After Enrique left that night, I began to notice the cracks in his charm. The way his texts grew curt, demanding, "Meet me tonight. Don't ignore me." His once playful smirks hardened into scowls when I hesitated. Love, or whatever this was, had curdled into possession. Richard, meanwhile, became a ghost. He stopped pretending to work late, openly taking calls in the garden with hushed, honeyed tones. I would watch him from the kitchen window, my nails carving half-moons into my palms. The blonde's name was Lana, 29, a paralegal. I had hired a PI to dig deeper, a decision that would cost me more than money. Enrique cornered me in the laundry room one afternoon, his grip firm on my wrist. "You're avoiding me." "I am busy," I snapped, yanking free. He stepped closer, the scent of gasoline and mint on his skin. "Busy stalking your husband?" My blood ran cold. How do you know that? You think I don't watch you? His laugh was bitter. You're in my blood, Sylvia, and you're drowning. I shoved past him, but his words clung like cobwebs. That night, I found a photo slipped under my pillow. Me and Enrique in the study, his lips on my neck. On the back, scribbled in Spanish, "¿Quieres jugar? You want to play?" Panic clawed at my throat. He had taken it himself, a trophy. Or a threat. Richard chose that moment to detonate our marriage. He stormed into the bedroom, face flushed with whiskey and fury, waving a folder. "You hired a detective? Are you insane?" I stood my ground, the photo burning a hole in my pocket. "Would you prefer I throw a party for you and Lana?" "This isn't about her." He slammed the folder down, bank statements, my withdrawals circled in red. "You've drained $15,000 in 2 months. What the hell for?" The lie came easily. "Therapy. Since my husband forgot I exist." He sneered. "Save the Victim Act. I want a divorce." The word hung there, sharp as shattered glass. All those years of silence, of swallowed rage, erupted. "You don't get to leave first," I hissed. "I have slept with Enrique. Repeatedly. In your bed." His face paled, then purpled. "You're lying." I pulled out the photo, tossing it at him. "Enjoy the view." He lunged, but I dodged, fleeing to the guest house. The sound of shattering china followed me. Enrique found me there hours later, curled on a dusty couch. He didn't ask questions, just knelt before me, hands on my knees, eyes glinting. "We can disappear. Mexico. I have cousins." "Stop." I pushed him away. "This is over." His smile died. "Over?" He stood looming. "You think I will vanish like a good little Empleado? I know your secrets. The money. The lies." He gripped my chin, forcing me to look at him. $10,000. Or Richard gets a copy of that photo. I laughed, tears hot on my cheeks. "You're a cliché. And you're desperate." He kissed me, cruel and claiming. "Tomorrow. Or I ruin you." I paid. In cash, stuffed in a duffel bag, handed over in a Walmart parking lot. He counted every bill, smirked, and drove off. I never saw him again. Richard's revenge was quieter, surgical. He leaked rumors to our country club, canceled my credit cards, and changed the locks. I slept in my car for 3 nights before checking into a motel, the stench of mildew and shame clinging to my skin. The final blow came via text from an unknown number, a photo of Enrique, grinning beside a pregnant woman. "Gracias por el regalo, señora." Thanks for the gift. I threw my phone into the highway, screaming until my voice broke. I had lost, not just Richard, or my home, but the delusion that I had ever been in control. The motel's neon sign flickered outside my window, staining the walls blood red. For weeks, I had lain on that scratchy comforter, replaying my choices. Richard's sneer, Enrique's smirk, the silence of a home I had turned to ash. I would become a ghost haunting my own life. But ghosts don't eat. Don't cry. Don't drive north in a dented Honda with $742 and a suitcase of regret. I settled in a Vermont town so small the grocery store doubled as a post office. My rented cottage smelled of pine and mildew. I hung no photos, bought no art. Just a desk, a laptop, and a whiskey bottle I vowed not to open. Therapy began on a Tuesday. Dr. Nguyen's office had a quilted couch and a box of tissues I emptied weekly. "Guilt is a prison," she said. "Do you want parole?" I didn't. Not yet. Then he appeared. Enrique. At the gas station of all places. I had stopped for coffee, unrecognizable in sweatpants and unwashed hair. But he gleamed, crisp white shirt, gold watch, arms slung around a petite woman with a round belly.
His belly.
Our eyes met. His smirk was a knife twist. "Senora," he purred, loud enough for his fiancée to hear. "Still hiding?" The girl giggled, oblivious. I dropped my coffee, scalding my ankles, and fled. That night, I Googled him. His construction company had gone viral on TikTok. A rags-to-riches fairy tale, funded by my desperation. Comments called him a hustler. I called him a thief. Dr. Nguyen wasn't impressed. "He's your scapegoat. You gave him the gun." She was right. So I wrote
This story.
these words, my confession, not for forgiveness, but to claw back the self I had buried under silk robes and shame. Richard remarried, Lana, of course. They host pool parties in my Georgian mansion. I bake sourdough, attend book clubs, and pretend not to miss the woman I was. But some nights, I wander the cemetery behind my cottage, tracing tombstones of strangers. I whisper to the wind, "I am sorry." No one answers. I traded diamonds for dust, and dust is all I breathe now. To my beloved audience, thank you for walking this jagged road with me. Your voices in the comments have been my compass. Share your thoughts below. Did Sylvia deserve her ending? Could you resist the spark? Let's ignite this discussion. If this story gripped you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support fuels this channel, turning whispers into echoes. For every subscription, I will keep writing, keep unraveling, keep remembering. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and never forget, the sharpest lies were the sweetest smiles.